sucks,
It does, but at the same time, humans are uniquely adaptable, and
this evening, where tonight we're going to talk about utility, franchise, water, and sewer fees. Mr. Smith?
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, such fun stuff we get to talk about. So I want to start off with a kind of just a where are we in the budget review and what's our game plan going forward. So we've heard from the police and the library, kind of given an overview of their operations, things that they do. We have the rest of the general fund departments lined up. Next week or next meeting will be Parks and Rec, and then we'll be doing kind of the departments located in City Hall will come after that. And then tonight we're talking a little bit about utility fees and then a franchise fee on water and sewer, what that would look like. And a couple meetings ago we talked, Mr. Morgan talked a little bit about the TRT and its uses and potential impact. And then we'll talk a little bit more. There'll be a few others as we go through the rest of the departments. And then at the end, we'll kind of bring that together and take a look at, what do our expenditures look like? What are the potential cuts that, the staff has worked on, and then how does that mesh up with, what kind of money would need to be generated if we wanted to do, first filling the gap, and then what it would look like if we wanted to add staff as far as police officers, things like that. So that'll be coming towards the end of October, first meeting in the time frame, as we start to bring all those things together, and then the council can start, kind of give us direction, which way to go, what things to kind of take a look at. So
should we expect a work session every city council meeting until then?
yes, that's the game plan right now.
Okay.
So,
Perfect, thank you.
all right, so utility fees. LOC did a survey in 2021, and I'm not sure it's 100% complete because it wasn't a primary question that they were after. It was kind of an afterthought, but based on that survey, at least 67 different cities have some type of utility fee. They're for very different types of things. So we have police, parks and recreation, fire, streets and street lights, library, surface water management is another one that's fairly common. And then the most common one is for police. And those that have these fees range in size from the city of Echo to the city of Beaverton. So you have a broad range of population, location, all of those things. Now, in that study, we didn't get the amounts on all of them. And so we're doing a little bit more in-depth study on a set group of cities that we'll be able to come back and kind of show you that. I've also just done a little bit of local that will come up as we go forward. But what I think this shows is that really this is a response to our limited local control on property taxes, on the primary way that cities generate revenue. We all have our hands tied at all different sizes, all different locations, and so this has been one response to that.
Mr. Smith, do they give you a number of responses? Because an LSE survey is not every city responds, right? So how many?
Yeah, so this was over 150 responses, I think, on the.
It's more than a third.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilor Peterson?
Did we happen to ask when they implemented the fees? I'm wondering how many of them were in response to when basically the law removal in regards to, what drugs were illegal?
Yeah, so that survey doesn't ask that question. And again, like I said, it's kind of almost an afterthought. So we're trying to do a little bit more in depth and see a little more detail about a select group of cities that we could say are pretty comparable to us. So we're going to use the group that we put forward when we do union negotiations. So there are not a lot of west side cities, more rural, more that we feel are comparable in economics to us than maybe the I-5 corridor. So we'll have that. We got a lot of it, but the responses didn't come in quite as quickly as we hoped, so don't have that all tonight.
Councilor McCarthy?
Do we know, this probably also wouldn't ask that question, but you might have some insight on this. If there were utility fees allocated for streets or parks or something, do we know whether or not those cities use that to bump up those budgets or just relax their general fund so that it can be used in other areas? Do we have any information?
I don't really have the information on that. My sense would be that it would be used to bump up, but I don't have that 100%. So what does this look like in Hermiston? So we have approximately 6,000 utility accounts. And so if you did a $1 fee on every one of those, that would generate about $72,000 a year. Now, just as a couple of local examples, in Stanfield, they have a police utility fee that's $8.50 a month. in Pendleton, they have a fee that's a combination of a street and public safety that's a total of $12.85. Now, that's even a base fee, so theirs is based on the size of the water meters. So if you, and that $12.85 is basically a residential size water meter. If you have a bigger one, the fee goes up. And that's something that frankly I learned as we started to dig deeper into this utility fee, is many cities do that as a way to show a greater impact on somebody who's using the system more than, let's say, just a single family home or an apartment complex or something like that. So that's something that we can look at a lot more closely as we dig into specific cities and how their ordinances are structured, if that's the way the council wants to go. So, like we talked about, kind of back in goal setting, this could be a police or public safety fee, could be Parks and Rec. Another possible idea that has been tossed around kind of within staff, but it could be a stormwater fee that could reduce the amount of, currently some of our franchise fees that go to the general fund, we have, council redirected some of those right now, 33%, a third of them, to the street fund to be able to supplement our ability to maintain our streets. And so, you know, if we, and we also pay all of our stormwater maintenance out of the street fund. So if we were to implement a stormwater fee, then you could potentially take some of that franchise fee revenue and leave it in the general fund rather than transfer it. So it's still an increase at the end, but it just would be for a different purpose. And I mentioned that mostly because we noticed that, you know, that surface water management, that's kind of that stormwater fee that a number of cities have used to implement. And so this last point is like I mentioned, I really learned that you could make it flat and then its impact is the same on the person who uses, you know, $100 a month worth of water versus somebody who uses $500 a month worth of water, or you can tier it in different ways so that its impact is different to the different groups. And I noted that's something that Pendleton did, that's something that I was looking at Tualatin's, they also did something like that. So it is a way that different cities are implementing. So this is another potential revenue source, which is a franchise fee on water and sewer. So currently, we charge all the other utilities who use city-owned right-of-ways some kind of a franchise fee. So there's 7% on both of the electric providers that operate in the city, and 5% on every telecom company that provides services within the city. And those are both the max that you can charge on those two industries. So, but there's no charge to our own water and sewer who are using those same right-of-ways. Now, in other cities I've been in, those electric providers or the natural gas providers always come back and say, well, you're not even charging your own franchise fee on yourself, you should do that. And so it is an option, and I think a number of cities, again, we don't have a good survey on this, so we're trying to do that as part of our other survey work with a specific group of cities. So we'll be able to show who is doing this. Is it common, at least within a smaller group of cities when we come forward. So in 2017 is when the council decided to dedicate, basically at that time the council raised franchise fees to those maximums and then dedicated a portion of that to the street department to kind of inject funding into our street program. Now this is an issue, I know Mark was on a call with ODOT and LOC this week about, you know, they're continuing to see their revenues, ODOT, gas tax revenues are just decreasing. And so this was our way of trying to inject some other types of funding into, that's still tied to a street because they're using those rights of way to operate their business. And so it's fairly logical to say some of that could go to maintaining and helping our street program. So what would this look like from an impact to a resident? So our approximate annual water and sewer revenue is about a little over $10 million. You do a 1% fee, it's about $100,000. So you can see if you go up to that 5 or 7, you're generating quite a lot of money. And this one, you know, I was originally thinking of the utility fee as more of a flat fee, not being able to scale it based on size. And this would be a lot more fair if you look at it from the fact that it's a percentage. So if I'm just, one person living in a house and my water bill's low, that's going to be reflected in how much I pay towards this franchise fee versus, an apartment complex, the car washes, or somebody who's a large water user, they're going to pay a lot more based on their usage. So that's a little bit more proportional to that. So one of the things that we've also talked about in relation to this is, could that resolution 2075 that originally set up the 1/3, could that be decreased to 15 or 20% going to the streets? And we particularly have looked at that as we anticipate or contemplate Amazon campuses coming online, where they will start paying that electric franchise fee that will then increase those franchise fee revenues by quite a lot. And so is that a kind of a trade-off? We're still, probably a year out before we start seeing a lot of that, but they're hoping to have a building hooked up by the end of this calendar year. So it won't be at full operation, but so go ahead.
Byron, so currently when we tie a franchise fee to a usage, right? It's another agency that's using our right of way.
Right.
Right. And that is to help pay for the infrastructure that essentially the citizens put in, right? So we currently structure our water and wastewater rates based on upkeep and maintenance, right? So how do we justify a franchise fee on something that we've already structured a fee into?
Well, I mean, the way we structure our water and sewer rates is based on maintaining the water and sewer infrastructure and not necessarily the overall street infrastructure. So, if we have to go in and repair a line, we'll pay to put a patch, and that's factored into the rates. But over time, when you cut a street like that, over time you're eventually going to have to redo the whole surface. And so we don't factor that into the rates of the water or sewer utility. And so that's where you could make the case for some small franchise fee on the water and sewer, because eventually you're going to need to make an overall type of repair on that street versus what you're doing when you patch a street for a fix or something like that.
So, yeah, right. So the bottom line is that we're trying to charge people more for what they're already getting, is what this comes out to me as. A franchise fee, to me, is something that we're charging an outside entity to use our stuff, our lines, our right of way. That we're ourselves. We're going to charge ourselves for this. That doesn't wash with me, and I have trouble trying to sell that to Mrs. Smith down the street or Mrs. Jones next door. That to me is just the same thing as raising the rates 3% or whatever the franchise fee that you're talking about adding into it. The bottom line is we're raising the prices 3% again. And this is where we run into problems. This is where we have people coming knocking on our doors telling us, why do we keep raising our rates?
I get it. This is just an option. We're trying to provide a lot of options, different things, way to look at it. If we want to get more services, we have to generate more revenue. So if we want to go back, if we go back and we look and we want to retract and we go that way, that we're just looking at options.
I think, what we've asked as a council of the administration, though, is to bring us back some options. Because we have a budget shortfall, right? And we've got a gap to close, and how can we close that gap with revenue? And what revenue options do we have that are accessible to us? We can't change the property tax rate, okay? We can't increase our assessed value by more than 3%. We can't change the rate at which we tax people on that assessed value. So what other revenue options do we have? And so we have to be open to different options, and this is, the way I'm hearing it, it's an option.
And I appreciate the feedback. I'm just saying this is one of our limited choice of options. And so it is something, we do, just to kind of take that idea a little further, we do charge, for example, the water and sewer fee. The water and sewer utility does get charged for services that they get from the general fund. So we're paying ourselves in some other ways in a similar situation, but that's just how it's been set up in the past, and so this would be something new, and I recognize that. And it would increase the cost, not trying to hide that at all.
Maria's hand first.
Yes. I think we can't really get upset at Mr. Smith for providing us with some options. That is what we charged him with, to do. So I think we have to, maybe we may not like it, we may not agree, but I think certainly that is what we asked him to do. So I think we need to be open and just listen to the information to see how we're going to be able to create revenue into our budget. So I think we just need to listen.
Okay.
I want to say I agree with a lot of Councilor Primer's points, but I think one thing to consider is that any fee that we introduce is essentially charging people more for things they're already receiving, because we're not adding new services, we just want to expand the ones we already do provide. So whether or not we put a police fee or a Parks and Rec fee, you can just go and do those right now. So it's just a way to generate extra funds. So I understand that rationale, but I think if we want to introduce fees as a way of generating revenue, it's going to have to be that kind of example.
Well, and we are talking a little bit about expanded services, more police officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be expanded services. Yeah, Councilor Peters.
I would set the tone that we are expanding services because we are serving an expanding city. We are, every time we bring in a new business, we are expanding security towards that business and people that will want to go to it. Every time a new law passes, then we are expanding services to uphold that law and, help navigate people through it that might choose to not follow it. That's what living in an expanding area is, and it comes with drawbacks and it comes with positive things. And when we were first talking about, having any sort of fee, I was like, what? I'm not big on that. I've done the food stamp thing. I'm not, I've counted every nickel. I've gone through every seat cushion looking for a quarter. I've done that. But we're talking about expanding safety into the city that is expanding. And what we have can only go so far. So we are trying to expand it to meet the need. So it's not just, it's not just about treading water. It's about doing well. And I think we need to maybe start looking at it that way, because I've been kind of like that. We're just trying to, give people what they've had. Yeah, but this is not the same place that it was a few years ago, and it's not going to be the same place. next year.
Councilman?
I would like to know, first of all, what areas are you talking about that you want to expand? Is it just raising funds just to go to the police department, or are there other areas that we need to raise money for? Because I personally do not want to raise the fees. We just had I think of this year, 3% on, and, you know, we meet people, I try to meet people. And they ask me, well, you know, we go here to eat, because it's cheap, you know. And then we have to fend for ourselves on the weekend. And when you hear people say that, because they can't even take a small dollar, some of them. Some are in good shape, I'm glad that they are. But, you know, as a representative, I feel like that I'm representing everyone. And so that's how I look at it. And I feel that we are all responsible for the amount of money that we were short on, not just one person, because we're all here with the budgets, and if we didn't understand something, I'm not a budget person, you know, here to ask more questions to get more clarification. And I didn't do that, so I feel that I'm just as responsible. But I don't want to put hardship on other people. It's going to be difficult, because the last time before I was on city council, it was full because people were talking, you know, because the water rate went up, they couldn't afford it. And even though they're working full time and talking about the children, they're all going to have to use the same bath water, you know? And so I think that I want to give a little bit more consideration if I decide to vote that direction. Where's the money going to go? And also, would it be like a time limit? Say, for instance, I see that Amazon, when that comes into play, that we're going to have more money. So would we do it for a year and then stop it because now we'll have more money, or how long would we have to do this?
Well, and kind of the first slide that I talked about is kind of the overall schedule. And so when we get to the end of talking about each department and then talking about the different possible revenue sources, then we'll bring those together, and that's where we'll talk about what you're saying is, what would it be useful? Where are we seeing a shortfall? And then if we do call it a public safety fee, you know, are we, you know, we're going to need to, I think, my feeling is we're going to need to show that that's what we're spending it on. And so those types of things, I think, will be, you know, incumbent on whatever decision is made. But yes, I think we would, and we could, I mean, we can do some projections, and we will, and that'll be part of that kind of final discussion, is what does that look like over the next 5 years? How does that factor in? And then you know, you'll be able to make the most informed decision that you can.
Yeah. Mr. Smith at the beginning kind of told us that these are all building blocks in this conversation, culminating with final discussion that won't be had tonight. But each of these, we're expected to have work sessions through the end of October to discuss all of these things. So,
Right.
please. Yes,
Just one more.
Yeah.
Just, you know, in deference to Mr. Ron, and as you just said, this is a conversation. This is where we talk about what we think and how we think about it, what our thoughts are towards this. To me, again, my comments were directed specifically towards the water and sewer franchise fee.
Mhm.
Okay, you know, that's purely and simply my view on that particular item. Now, whether we choose to institute some of the other things, that's again part of the discussion. But the whole thing is that this is a discussion. This isn't just a one-way exchange of information. This has to go both ways. We have to be able to say what our views are on this, and if we can't, and if we don't express our views, then tacit approval is what is being given for allowing things to continue on down a path that we don't want it to. So, you know, I'm not one to sit idly by and let something go. So that's how it is.
And we will all have our opportunities to share our own opinions as we go through this. I mean, we're each 8 individuals, I don't get to vote on this, so, well, maybe. I usually don't get to vote on this stuff. And so at some point, we'll all have an opportunity to voice our concerns and which ones we think are the best. All right, Mr. Smith, please.
Yeah, so before I go to kind of the final slide, which is just kind of more encouraging discussion, is I wanted to lay out a few of the other potential revenue sources that we are going to be kind of examining as we kind of go through the rest of this process. One is a business license fee, and that we'll have that come up as we kind of talk with the planning department and building department and that things. I don't know why I tied it to that, but that's what when we'll talk about it. And then we'll also kind of bring in a couple of other potential revenue sources that are a little harder to talk about, just because they're harder to implement. That would be one is a gas tax, and that doesn't really help a lot general fund wise, but you could do the same thing that we mentioned before, where you shift that franchise fee back to the general fund and then supplement the streets. Then one of the items that we hear a lot from other cities is the marijuana tax. That was something approved by the voters. That would probably have to go back to them to get approved. So both of those two would require a vote before they could be implemented. So we will touch on those and try to give what we can as far as potential revenue generation that they could do. But I'd be open to if there's any others that I've missed that you might have heard of that you'd like us to research. I want to use this time to try to pick up any of those.
So, Mr. Smith, when we did Resolution 2075 and raised the franchise fees, what does a third mean?
So it's about 300,000. So we're generating about $1 million in franchise fees.
Additional franchise fees. So at that
No, it's total, because what we did was we looked at what we were currently getting, what would the increase be, and we tried to, that increase was going to generate another third, we thought, we projected, and so that's why we dedicated the third.
So that increase went all to streets, essentially?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind as we think about changing that resolution and what that means as an impact to the general fund budget. So if you did a gas tax, for instance, and you were able to replace that $300,000, that
Yeah.
could be $300,000 back towards the general fund if we change that resolution.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. McCarthy?
A couple questions in regards to the remaining 2/3 of the franchise fees. I'm just curious where that goes.
It goes into the general fund, and, just like property tax.
Speaking in regards to business license fees, do we have any information, and if not, I would like this when we get to that point, regarding similar population size, what they're doing as far as license fees, and potentially regionally, how we would compare within X mile radius?
Yeah, we'll be doing similar type of research with that as well to check in with cities that are comparable.
And then one final question. You mentioned something regarding the marijuana tax, and my understanding is that we don't allow dispensaries in our city, so would we need to also potentially open that possibility up in order to introduce a marijuana tax?
Correct. Because if we just implemented the tax, there would be nothing to tax if we didn't have dispensaries. But also that opens up some avenue for some state revenue, even though if you talk to the cities now, that has really dropped tremendously since Measure 110. So there's not a lot of state revenue on that side. So.
And the other, conversation around business licenses, you are creating a new administration problem. And so there's a cost in there. Somebody's got to manage and monitor that, right? Whether you're working with, Chamber of Commerce, or you add it into your department, that's another growth in government. And so what's the net, in that sort of conversation?
And that's kind of, internally, we've had this discussion for a long time, we've been told, the city of Pendleton gets a lot of revenue from their business licenses. Well, you can either implement a business license and then just use it as basically a revenue source, and you don't do any more to go out and try to enforce it, and then it's pure revenue. Or if you're going to implement it and it's real, then you have to have some money to spend on enforcement, like you said. And so then what's the net gain if we're going to have to add staffing or something like that? So, yeah. Because there are some that I would say, there is no enforcement. Basically, they're just requiring it, and if people do it, they get the revenue. If they don't, they don't.
Yes, Councilor Lynn?
My question is, if people come in and want to start a new business here in Hermiston, and can it be, if we decide to vote to do a fee, or whatever you want to call it, towards them, that they have to pay the fee then in order to get the license? And then, if I'm understanding you, the people that already have licenses, that's where you want to look at whether or not you have to hire someone to collect that money to enforce it, or?
Well, see, basically, nobody that operates a business in the city of Hermiston right now has to have a business license. And so, I guess, except for food trucks, that would be the only difference. And so there's a very limited number of those. But, so if the council were to implement one, we would basically try to get everybody who has a business that we could come up with a contact, and we try to get them to pay it. And then anybody who comes in to start up a new business would then be required to pay it as well. And, it's a common question that our front desk staff takes whenever someone's coming in and wants to start a business. They expect that to be the case. And they expect to have a business license, and when they say we don't have one, are you sure? Really? That's often their response, because they're used to that being some charge that they get. So,
But in some communities, is there value to that business license? Meaning, there's some sort of oversight that the business is operating in a particular manner that they're supposed to be operating in. They're following state or city rules or whatever those are.
well, and this is something that Mr. Spencer and I have talked a little bit about as sort of a variation on that, would be kind of a zoning verification. So sometimes, business wants to operate, and they pick this building, but they really can't operate that kind of business in that building. And had we had some kind of a business license or something where they had to come in up front, then we could catch that ahead of time. Other cities that I've been in, they would utilize that to make sure they're meeting kind of safety standards. So that was a city that also had a fire department, so within the city, and so they would check kind of fire life safety things. And so that could be something we could do in conjunction with the fire district, if that were, part of it. But, I think it really varies depending on the city, whether it really has any impact on how they do their business.
Because at some point, right, we're going to have to sell this, whatever the
Right.
decision is that we as a council decide. And,
Right.
so going to a business and say, we're just going to.
They just want money.
Just because we need money,
Yeah.
right? That one's a hard sell.
Yeah.
And so, but, I'm not saying that businesses shouldn't be part of the solution though either. So we all got to figure out how to do this together. Other questions, Councilman Carter?
Just a comment regarding, I think I said something about this when we talked about a potential business license of whatever X $100 was suggested. I would just like to take into consideration that in my own separate work of trying to recruit for the chamber sometimes, there are some people who won't join because they can't afford the lowest tier level. So I would just like the city to take that into consideration when deciding a number. for a potential business license, because I would like everybody to be able to operate
Sure.
well, instead of having for someone to think they can't, or they won't be in compliance if they don't because they can't afford it.
Yeah, and one of the we used kind of just a flat number when we put out the original estimates, but one of the ways that you can do that is tiered based on employee numbers or, gross revenues, different things, so you can, a smaller business could have a smaller fee because of their, just their size, so that's definitely something we can consider.
Other questions? This one? Anything else, Mr. Smith?
Well, that went a lot faster than I thought, so we have a few extra minutes, looks like.
All right, so we are going to adjourn the work session and start our regular city council meeting right at 7 o'clock. All right, we're going to call the city council meeting for August 28th to order with a declaration of a quorum. We're going to excuse Councilor Myers. And I understand Councilor Barone will be here, but he's going to be late. He has school district responsibilities this evening. So, okay, please join me in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening and welcome. Just disconnected.
They'll be right with you.
Please stand by.
All right, that work? Okay, so good evening, welcome everybody. Good to see you here this evening. If you're just joining us, we had a work session this evening where we continue to talk about our budget and departments and potential evaluation of how we make our expenses and revenues line up better. And we will continue to have those conversations, so if you've got nothing better to do on the second and fourth Mondays of the month at 6 o'clock, we'll be continuing those conversations for the next couple months. Mr. Smith, any changes to the agenda this evening? No. Okay. We have a very special recognition this evening. Mr. Smith, do you want to introduce this?
I think I'll let Mr. Arts do that.
Okay. Mr. Arts, Parks and Rec Department. Mr. Arts is our director for our Parks and Rec Department, and you guys had a special award or something, right?
We did. City Council, thank you for giving us the opportunity to recognize these fine individuals up here. These are our lifeguard supervisors at the Aquatic Center. They are the front line to what we do at the Aquatic Center and get our lifeguards and our staff trained up to make sure that our community is safe. In August of 2022, last August, Hermiston Family Aquatic Center underwent a rigorous evaluation by the American Red Cross. They conducted unannounced audits of our lifeguards and went through the operations and watched meticulously about how our lifeguards and our supervisory staff function. In June 2023, we were awarded the Aquatics Examiner Service Award, which is a testament to our excellence in both training and operations. It's important to note that this achievement was not realized overnight. Rather, is a product of ongoing commitment by these individuals, by our staff, taking a hold of the trainings that are being conducted. And it's still diligently passed down through the leadership ranks. In 2019, a novel approach was brought forth by Aquatic Center manager Cassia Robbins. Instead of doing monthly 1 to 2 hour in-service trainings that go over CPR, trainings that go over rescues within the water, she devised a plan to do in-services every single day. This allowed our staff to be ready at a moment's notice. These trainings happened 15 minutes before we opened for public swim. So these individuals who come in possibly, staying up all night, texting on their phones, because most of them are high school age students. During the summer when they have their off periods, they come in and we put them right to work, get their eyes open, go through some of these CPR trainings, rescue training, so that when the patrons and the public come in, they're ready to go, ready to be on stand watching the water so that everybody is safe. This strategic adjustment has yielded tangible results. We've seen greater morale. They get to come together as a team, working diligently and doing these trainings, and then it heightens their readiness. Cassie and I have actually presented this model nationally to the aquatics managers and facilitators, and we have guided a few facilities to transition to this model. The devotion exhibited by each of these individuals to the prosperity of the Aquatic Center is immeasurable. we welcome over 75,000 individuals within a mere 11 weeks. The health and safety of our community remains of paramount concern to these individuals, and it shows. I am proud to share that once again this year, we have successfully returned every single swimmer that has stepped foot in our facility. This remarkable feat begins with our exceptional leadership, whose unwavering commitment ensures that seamless functioning of the facility while prioritizing safety. As we stand here tonight, it's imperative that we extend our applause to these individuals, who though are part-time workers to us, they have full-time education positions outside of what they do. Keith Holman is a principal at Echo School District. Jessica Campbell down the line here is an elementary curriculum instructional coach for Echo School District. And Marissa Wise is a full-time preschool teacher. And then Kasia Robbins has taken over leadership 6 years ago of the facility and spends countless hours at home thinking about ways to improve safety. And she passes that down to our leadership staff to be able to implement. All of the staff here have full-time jobs elsewhere, but they come here during the summer and they give up their family time during the summer, during their off hours, to be able to instruct our lifeguards to make sure that our facility is safe. This award resonates as a testament to the remarkable endeavors they have undertaken, and it's reflecting of their steadfast dedication to excellence and the well-being of our community. So thank you for allowing us to be here and recognizing their hard work over the past few summers to get our aquatic center where it is today.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
Look like you played a joke on me. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for your leadership as well as the Park and Recs Director. Leaders often follow the direction of leaders above them. And so having you as an excellent leader in our Parks and Rec Department is reflected upon these individuals as well. So we have some certificates of recognition we'd like to present to you guys this evening. And I'm going to read one. This one's presented to Kasia. In recognition of her outstanding leadership and guidance as an aquatic center manager, Kasia Robbins is commended for her pivotal role in leading the lifeguard team at the Hermiston Family Aquatic Center to achieve the esteemed 2022 Aquatic Examiner Service Award from the American Red Cross. The Hermiston Family Aquatic Center obtained this award through a comprehensive evaluation process conducted by the American Red Cross. Rigorous lifeguard audits and meticulous observations were undertaken to assess the center's adherence to safety protocols, the staff's competence, and overall operational excellence. Following these evaluations, both the Aquatic Center and its dedicated staff received recognition for their exceptional performance in training, safety enforcement, and vigilant supervision of aquatic activities. On this 28th day of August 2023, we acknowledge Kasia Robbins as an exemplary embodiment of leadership. Through her commitment to diligently train and guide the aquatic staff, she has played a pivotal role in upholding the safety of the Hermiston community during their visits to the Aquatic Center. That's Kasia. I also have one for Mr. Holman. I also have one for Mrs. Wise and Jessica Campbell. And then there are some other individuals that aren't here this evening, right? Maya Hayden, and Janelle Davis, and Dylan Westfall. And I think you all deserve a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's always a pleasure when we get to recognize our staff for their outstanding service and work. So let's do more of this, right? We have an amazing staff, and it's always an
enjoyable experience when we get to have them come up front. And I know how much they love standing in front of us and talking. And so I'm sure it was difficult, and that's probably why these three didn't show up tonight.
Why they ran out the door so fast.
Why they're out of here already. But it's always fun to recognize staff's good work. Ms. Linton, you got a comment?
Yes, I did. I just was going to thank them for their work. My grandson's been going to swimming lessons since they were 5 years old, and they're now 10. And they've done an excellent job. And one day when I was out there, the lifeguards had to blow the whistle because the little kid looked like he was going under. And you should have seen them. They were just in there. I'm like, oh, wow, I was really impressed. You know, and what the parent turned around and grabbed them really quick. But I was really impressed with the service that they're doing at the Aquarium Center. So I just wanted to say thank you to them.
Yeah, very good. Mr. Smith, I'm sure you can pass that along. I will. All right, so now we're at first opportunity in our city council meeting for citizen input. This one is all about non-agenda items. So if there's something not on our current agenda you would like to speak to, please come up to the microphone up front, introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and try and limit them to less than 5 minutes. No takers this evening? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent agenda, items A through C. Does the council need to pull any of those consent agenda items? Seeing none, any public comment on consent agenda items A through C? Seeing none, can I get a motion for approval of consent agenda items A, B, and C?
So second.
Then moved by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Duran, that we approve consent agenda items A, B, and C as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. No items removed. We're now moving on to our section for a public hearing. It's an appeal of a planning department decision, S.A. Smith LLC, 4N2814 BBT tax lot 102 and 300-945 South Highway 395. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing to consider an appeal of a planning staff decision approving a site plan for charge occupancy at 945 South Highway 395. The planning staff approved the permit on July 11, 2023, subject to 11 conditions of approval. The applicant has filed an appeal of 2 approval conditions and 1 statement in the approval. Conditions 5 and 8 and a general note regarding utility poles are being appealed to the City Council. The City Council is holding an on-the-record hearing to consider this appeal. The hearing will be limited to the argument and evidence based on the issues and evidence presented during the administrative review, including development standards in 157.164 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be based on the record and directed towards the criteria described above, or to other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which apply to this decision. Failure to provide statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to LUBA based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval sufficiently specific to allow the local governments to respond to the issue or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. I'm sorry, this is very long, so stay with me. The City Council may affirm, reverse, or amend the administrative decision. The City Council may also choose to remand the decision to the planning staff for additional refinement. The staff report was made available to the public on August 21st, at least 7 days in advance of this hearing. Clint, would you confirm that the entire file on this matter is physically before the City Council?
It is.
Okay. The procedure for this hearing is as follows. The City Council may ask questions of any person or staff at any time. The City Council will disclose any bias, conflicts of interest, or ex parte contacts or conversations about the appeal with persons other than the staff before tonight's hearing. Following any such disclosures, any person may challenge a City Council member's right to participate in the hearing, the substance of an ex parte contact, and the City Council's jurisdiction to hear the matter. The City Council will then act on any challenges before proceeding with the hearing. The staff report. Is that now?
I think you finished reading the...
I finished reading it, then the staff report. Okay, so just going over the procedure.
Yes.
So we're going to declare a conflict of interest if we have one, then the staff report, then testimony in favor of the appeal will be received from those who participated orally or in writing in the administrative review. Then testimony in opposition will be received from those who participated orally or in writing in the administrative review. When you begin your testimony, please give us your name and mailing address. Following public testimony, the staff may provide a summary of the issues discussed in the hearing, respond to any testimony, and answer any questions from the City Council. The City Council will then decide how to proceed on the appeal. It may close the public hearing. It may continue the public hearing to a date certain. It may leave the record open for submittal of additional written testimony only. If the City Council decides to continue the public hearing or leave the written record open, it will give the date, time, and place of the continued hearing or the period of time the written record will be left open. We will now proceed with the hearing. Are there any City Council disclosures of bias, conflict of interest, and ex parte contacts? Councilor Brown, were you present for all of that I just read? No.
Let me speak on the record. No.
Okay, so Mr. Tubby, does he have to sit this out, or do I need to reread this to him?
There we go. No, I don't believe you'll have to reread those instructions to him. Those are instructions for how the hearing will progress. If he has a question about how the hearing should go forward, he can ask that.
Okay.
But we're good to move forward.
So I just asked if the City Council, so we're in the public hearing for appeal in front of the Planning Department, and we are at the point at which City Council will disclose any bias, conflict of interest, or ex parte contacts about this conversation before tonight's meeting. Any councilors have a conflict of interest? Okay. We will now open the hearing. Planning Director Clint Spencer will now present the staff report.
Okay, thank you. And this also is fairly lengthy, so please bear with me as well. City Council is holding a hearing to consider an appeal of a staff decision to approve a site plan for a change of occupancy for property located at 945 Highway 395 South. The property is located in the southeast quadrant of the city and is located in blue on the maps in the monitors for the audience. The site plan approved a change in occupancy for this building, permitting the addition of a drive-up window and adding a soda fountain with no indoor seating inside the building. The building has previously been used as an insurance office and a salon, as well as other uses going into the past. The next slide shows you the Highway 395 frontage of the property, just as if you were looking eastward from Highway 395 right in front. And then this slide shows the southeast 4th Street frontage of the property. The approved plan is to use this driveway that's highlighted in yellow as an entrance to get to the drive-up window on the north side of the building. The last slide is a site plan submitted by the appellant showing the reconfiguration of the 10-foot strip of land, that would be the magenta area, connecting this building to southeast 4th Street. The appellant has appealed 3 items, 1 general note and 2 approval conditions in the staff approval, and asks the City Council to reconsider these items. Item 1 is a general note which states, quoting from the approval, there is a utility pole located at the northeast corner of tax lot 102. Southbound turning movements from northeast 4th Street into the driveway may have difficulties negotiating this turn without clipping the utility pole or trespassing onto tax lot 301. On this slide I showed earlier, you can see the utility pole and the driveway are highlighted. There's a red arrow going to the utility pole, and then the driveway is highlighted in yellow. Item number 2 is a condition of approval number 5, which states the city engineer has reviewed the driveway approach to Southeast 4th Street and determined it is currently functional but will be inadequate in the future. At the time a second tenant is proposed, a new approach to Southeast 4th Street will be required. Item 3 is also a condition of approval, condition number 8, which stated parking lot lighting shall be installed and designed with hoods or shielding to avoid projection of glare on adjacent residential dwellings. As was mentioned in the mayor's script, an appeal to the City Council is an on-the-record procedure. Only those who participated in the original land use decision process are eligible to participate in the appeal. However, those who did participate may be represented at the hearing. Evidence is limited only to that evidence which was presented as part of the original
limited land use decision and is contained in the project file. Evidence which clarifies existing evidence is admissible, but new evidence and new participants are not permitted. Kind of discussing from a staff perspective what the underlying logic is of the 3 items under appeal. The first appeal is of a general note that was talking about the location of the utility pole. It was purely an operational comment provided by the city, noting that this pole is directly adjacent to this driveway cut. And when we were reviewing the site plan, both Hermiston Energy Services and Anderson Perry, our city engineers, visited the site and determined that it does not require relocation in order for the driveway to be used. However, it's always a possibility, given that the pole is within inches of the driveway, that it may eventually be struck. And so we were thinking it would be a good idea if the applicant was aware of the pole being in that location, so that should it eventually be struck, they can have their staff prep on any appropriate response. That being said, it is only an operational note, and we recommend that the notation be removed from the approval. The second appeal point is of a requirement to rebuild the driveway onto Southeast 4th Street in the future. This property will be subject to an additional site plan review when the balance of the building receives a tenant. Right now, the soda fountain is only occupying half of the building, and a number of parking spaces required for a soda fountain will mean that it may limit the future use of the remaining portion of the building to probably a service-oriented, a salon-type use. To be able to provide adequate parking, we'll need to be able to verify that, so we would require a second site plan approval for any additional tenant moving in, just so we can verify that all of our parking requirements are still met. In an effort to create, our city has a really business-friendly reputation, and because the driveway is functional at this time, and it may require relocating the pole, which was mentioned in the general note, to rebuild that driveway. We recommend that the rebuilding of the driveway be deferred until that second tenant comes in, so that they would have the opportunity to set aside funding necessary to do any driveway rebuilding. If no additional tenant enters the building, then no rebuilding on this driveway is required. We recommend that the City Council uphold this staff condition. And the third appeal point is of approval condition number 8, which is a requirement that parking lot lighting be shielded to avoid glare onto nearby residential properties. It's based on our parking lot design standards in the development code, which state glare from lighting is prohibited. Artificial lighting which may be provided shall not create or reflect substantial glare in a residential zone or on any adjacent building. This condition is a general condition placed on all site plan reviews. We've been using that same wording for about 25 years now. It is not a requirement that lighting actually be installed, but a requirement that if lighting is installed, it needs to be shielded. We recommend, just for the sake of clarity, that we can modify the condition to state where parking lot lighting is installed, whether building or pole mounted, such lighting shall be installed to not create or reflect substantial glare in a residential zone or on any adjacent building. So basically clarifying, rather than saying parking lot lighting shall be installed with shielding, which could be a little amorphous and subject to interpretation, we're saying with the recommended change where parking lot lighting is installed. If you install it, in other words, then it needs to be shielded from residential view. The City Council may choose to affirm the site plan as originally prepared by staff. You may choose to modify the site plan approval conditions and the general notations, remove any conditions or notations, or remand the site plan back to staff for additional revisions. We are recommending that City Council make a motion to strike general note number 1, make a motion to uphold condition number 5, and make a motion to amend condition number 8, as I mentioned earlier in the staff report. Any decision made by the council tonight, we would recommend be made as an oral decision, and then direct the city attorney and I to prepare findings of fact to support that decision, which we would then bring back and make a final decision at the next available council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. We'll now take public testimony received only from those who have participated orally or in writing in the administrative review. Those individuals are asked to state their name and mailing address and limit their testimony to 5 minutes. Would anyone like to testify in favor of the appeal? Seeing none, would anyone like to testify in opposition to the appeal? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Spencer, will you now present the staff summary?
Don't really have a lot to add at this point. There's no additional testimony to respond to. So I would just reiterate the staff recommendation to make an oral decision tonight, direct staff to prepare findings, and then the 3 motions are to strike General Note 1, uphold Condition 5, and amend Condition 8 to specify that parking lot lighting shall be shielded in the event it is installed.
Okay, thank you. Council, how would you like to proceed? You can close the hearing, or you can continue the public hearing to a date certain. Well, we're going to ask questions about this. Just how would you like this to proceed? Would you like to close it today or allow future testimony to be submitted?
Well, I was trying to find out, as I said, if you weren't a part of the original, that you're not to be a part of the vote. So I just want to know, was I a part of the?
Oh, this was if you were part of the original review process that went in front of the Planning Commission. That's how you could participate to testify tonight. If you weren't part of that, you're the judiciary body. You get to participate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How would the council like to proceed? I don't see a reason why we should keep the hearing open. Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't any additional testimony tonight. I don't know that there will be any additional testimony in the future. So,
Say we'll move forward.
so close the hearing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, let's close the
Okay. All right. Now would be a great time to ask questions. Do I need to vote on that, Mr. Tubby, on closing the hearing?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we should close.
Okay. Can I get a
motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Duran, that we close the public hearing. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 6-1 with Mr. Barone and the negative, whatever that means. All right, so now we'll open it up for council questions. So Mr. Smith, as I understand it, the second one, the second 5, I guess it was, you referred to the driveway. So who would be responsible for improving that driveway, and if that pole needed to be removed or replaced, who would be responsible for that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, the pole is actually located in right-of-way. It's in the sidewalk right now, so it's not on any private property. But however, whoever is doing any improvement to a sidewalk is responsible to make sure that the sidewalk itself is traversable.
Okay. So it seems to me that that would be a pretty significant expense. I mean, in order to replace that light pole or electrical pole, it seems like you'd have to maybe replace 2 poles and increase the span there so that you could get that pole out of the way. I don't know, I'm not an electrical engineer, but it seems to me that that would be pretty expensive to do that.
Yes, that's why we wanted to defer it to a later date.
But I also think that intersection is really bad. And so if we're going to have it as a drive-through, and meaning that's the main access or the reason that people are coming in there, it should be a good drive-through. And so the engineer said this is a good drive-through for, I mean, we've seen this with places like Dutch Brothers, right? Where we had some really crappy designs and people backed up out of the street into 395 and, you know, they had to improve the entire parking lot. So if this is a popular place and it's successful, it seems like that access should be good. So the engineer feels like this is a good access. Is that what I'm understanding?
The access right now is functional. The only thing it does not meet are slope standards in our current public works standards. So when we adopt our new public works standards each year, we adopt new ADA standards, we adopt new driveway standards, and so this one is no longer compliant with those requirements.
And they're improving that as part of the condition of this approval?
No, that's what it would be approved down the road, but not now.
Councilor Peterson?
So it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like we're kicking the can down the road but into their driveway.
Can you repeat the second half?
Yeah, because it sounds like, so this is something that's going to need to be improved anyway. And Brett, we're gonna make it their problem in the long term, because when this eventually has to get improved, which we know it's going to, so yeah, where the idea of like kicking the can down the road, we'll take care of it later, but we're kicking towards them. Because
Well, it would be incumbent on them to do it now or later. It's not a city rebuild.
I'm not sure that's clear, Clint. Can you define that a little better? What do you mean it's incumbent? We understand it's not the city's responsibility?
Exactly, yeah.
So you said now or later. What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
the staff has the option, because anytime you're rebuilding or changing an occupancy, it triggers our development standards in our code. And you can either require the improvement to be installed now before a certificate of occupancy is issued, or you can defer it to a later date through an agreement.
And so you're suggesting that you defer it to a later date once the second occupant or additional occupants are in the building?
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make more clear?
Okay, so, but then they're still gonna be the ones that are gonna have to pay to.
Yes.
And with that in mind, and this being, I'm guessing, the small businesses, are there, like, what I was thinking is like, how are the bills gonna get paid? So it's like, are there, since we're not gonna be the ones picking up the tab, are there funding out, pardon me if I'm, holding the mic too long, are there grants and things like that out there for people?
No, it does become a part of the cost of doing business. The Morehouse Apartments, with their driveway onto Northwest 11th Street, there was a pole right in the middle of their driveway, and it had to be relocated at their expense. The other option the council does have, because you are ultimately the arbiters of the public works standards, is to say we don't feel that this driveway needs to be rebuilt at all. That's part of the option of amending the conditions of approval. So just to make that clear, there are really three options you have.
I saw Councilor Barron's hand first.
I just want to ask council, like, more, Mr. Spencer, I guess, what a timeline, and an adequate timeline would be. If I'm hearing this right, we're doing the deferring more for the advantage of the business, so that way they don't have to pay all these upfront costs, and they can do it when it's a little bit more manageable for them. So when do you recommend that we, I guess, and eventually we're gonna have to put our ordinances and everything into effect, so what would be an appropriate date?
Well, and that's the thing with the way the condition was written. The applicant has the complete driver's seat on that, because as long as they let the second half of the building sit vacant, it's never required to be installed. And so it's really, when do they want to fill that section?
Councilor McCarthy?
That was basically my question, is if the space is never filled, there would never be a requirement, in theory, to improve the driveway.
Ms. Lynn?
So this is a residence that we're looking at on that picture where the yellow circle is on Southeast 4th Street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the person's resident. So I know that street is pretty busy. And so when people are coming down, they're going to be making a right turn to go down the alley in order to get to a business that's going to be behind it?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay, so how is it going to affect the parking for the people that live there?
Right now, they have parking off of Southeast 4th Street. They also have parking in the back that's serviced through the applicant's property, but that's up to them to negotiate who has access to that parking in the back. That's not something that the city really gets involved with, because that's a civil matter of sharing access across two private properties. But they do have, as you can see in the picture, a driveway onto 4th Street with a garage and a parking area.
Thank you.
And the second condition, you suggested if they put additional lighting up,
Mhm.
that it had to be shielded. Okay. What was the appeal? What was the reason for the appeal? Was there a note?
I believe that there was actually some miscommunication because the way the condition was interpreted by the appellant, in my understanding, is that we were saying shall install pole lighting in the parking lot. There was no lighting plan provided as part of the site plan, so we do this catch-all where lighting is installed, it shall be shielded.
Okay. Other questions, councilors? Okay, so there are 3 potential motions or actions that you could take tonight. And one would be the first motion, and these are all administrative recommendations, right? This came from Mr. Spencer. You directly or the planning commission?
This was a planning staff decision.
Okay.
This is not a planning, because this is an outright permitted use, this is only an administrative review. So all of the original administrative conditions came from me.
Okay. So the first one was to strike the general note number 1. Okay, so that, do you guys remember what general note number 1 was? Okay. So moving forward, strike that. So that's the first action for you to consider. So I would take a motion to strike general note number 1.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we strike general note number 1. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. The second condition was to uphold condition number 5, which would be requiring the owner to rebuild the driveway once there's an additional occupant in the building. Any questions about that? Yes, Mr. McCartney.
I just would like to be clear what the appellant is asking for in regards to condition number 5, to remove that?
Yeah, the appeal is to completely remove condition number 5. So in other words, leave the driveway as it is now.
Thank you. Okay. I would accept the motion.
Can I have a clarification on that? I have another question. So this would essentially make the person that's appealing, they would still have to rebuild this pole in a different location by agreeing to this.
It's not 100% clear that the pole absolutely has to be moved. That's something that would come through the civil review, but it's definitely a potential.
And there are no safety concerns with this?
Not from HES or Anderson Perry.
Thank you.
Move to uphold condition number 5.
Is there a second? Okay, it's moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Peterson, that we uphold condition number 5. Roll call.
Yes.
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 No. Oh,
Yes.
no.
No.
All right, motion passes 5-2 with Councilor McCarthy and Councilor Linton in the negative. Last one, motion to amend condition number 8 to state where parking lot lighting is installed, whether building or pole mounted, such lighting shall be installed to not create or reflect substantial glare in a residential zone or on any adjacent dwelling. Any questions about that? I would accept a motion to amend condition number 8.
So moved to. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Barone, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we amend condition number 8 to state, as I mentioned earlier. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your patience tonight, council. That was one that we don't do very often, so good job getting through it. All right, we're going to move on to Resolution 2287, Temporary Water and Wastewater Service Agreement with Amazon Data Center, Inc. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Morgan.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you this evening is a proposed water and wastewater services agreement with Amazon Data Services. Some of you know, some of you may not, my formal training is in journalism, and I thought how better to explain this than to use the 6 W's of journalism. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. In Idaho, how is W?
3 hours of reading right into it.
Yeah. So, first off, what is it? So this is important to keep in mind. There's a number of different components here, and most of them are permanent. One is just temporary, though. So it's a permanent agreement with the company to provide them with drinking water, sanitary sewer service, and then industrial process sewer service, and then a temporary agreement to provide their facility with cooling water. Like I mentioned, a lot of those things show up all throughout the agreement, but basically agreeing to permanently supply them with drinking water, sanitary sewer, industrial process sewer service by the end of next month. And then for the temporary cooling water service, that would run from the end of next month through February 1st of 2025, which effectively works out to 16 months. Also probably important to keep in mind, this agreement, if you're looking at the total amount of water that we're talking about supplying, is a significant amount of water on a temporary basis, enough in order to accommodate an entire campus build out. Based on their current construction process, they'll be tilting up the walls on their first building tomorrow. So we may potentially see maybe 2 buildings getting cooled next summer. Probably 1, maybe 2 buildings. Certainly probably not going to be seeing all 4 buildings operational next summer. And so then by February 1st of 2025 is when we'll see the permanent cooling water service being supplied. So this agreement, again, is only for temporarily supplying them with that water for 1, potentially 2 buildings for effectively 1 cooling season, which would be the cooling season of 2024. Where is it? You can see here. See if my pointer shows up. Yes, there's the main part of the city. There's 395. There's the Walmart Distribution Center, Feedville Road, and basically the 2 red rectangles are the 2 campuses that are discussed in the agreement. How would we be actually serving them? This is a little bit closer zoomed in image. Again, there's Feedville Road, the Walmart Distribution Center off to the side, the 2 campuses there. The dark blue line is an existing city potable water main that has been chlorinated and converted to potable status this summer that existed between 207 and First Place. The development has paid or is paying as part of this agreement to extend the new light blue line in Feedville all the way from First to Kelly and then up Kelly to Penny to be able to supply this campus with cooling water for 1 season effectively. And then additionally, as part of this agreement, one of the other exhibits, they'll be constructing additional potable water service line, the light blue line that comes down Southeast 9th in order to serve that western campus, the one on the left-hand side there, with cooling water and drinking water, as well as, it's harder to see, but there is a green line there next to one of those light blue lines, and they'll be constructing a sewer line in order to serve that western or the left-hand campus with sewer long-term. So what is this all made up of? So on the permanent drinking water side of things, again, if you read through the agreement, just kind of the way that it's structured, it breaks the 2 campuses into 2 different sections a little bit. So these numbers take both of those campuses and combine them together. So on the permanent drinking water side of things, we're looking at 10,000 gallons per day of drinking water that we're guaranteeing to supply to them. If you thought about that in terms of the median household in Hermiston, that's equivalent to adding 21 homes. So really not a huge amount of water demand from that standpoint. Important to keep in mind also in the agreement, speaking about water price, they'll be paying the same price as everybody else. Very simple, they'll be paying the city's water rates for all of their water. Then also something else to keep in mind, they'll be paying the same as every other customer for the water that they use, but then also being a new development coming on, paying for additional system capacity, those types of things. That's why we have system development charges between the 2 campuses. When they pull their permit for the second campus, they will have paid a total of $80,000 in system development charges on the water side of things. That's equivalent to the system development charges on 255 single-family homes. So I think they have sized their meter enough to more than accommodate the demands that they have. On the sanitary sewer service side of things, again, talking about both campuses combined here, guaranteeing that we will accept up to a maximum of 28,000 gallons per day of sanitary sewer. That's equivalent to 168 households, the median household in Hermiston. The sewer price, this one is a little bit different than the water side of things. There's, in Hermiston, all residences and commercial users all pay the same rate. The only other rate class that we have one customer for currently is an industrial rate, and that is where we actually meter their discharge. So for everybody else, we just base your sewer amount based on what your wintertime water consumption is. That wouldn't make any sense on this because the bulk of their water is going to be coming in the summertime. So we are actually requiring that they install a meter on their sewage discharge, which is included in our industrial rate classification. So they will be metered for the actual flow that they discharge to us. Additionally, that meter that includes an auto sampler allows us to sample the discharge that they're sending to us so that we can charge them for anything that's included in the sewage. We've had Anderson Perry take a look at what their proposed effluent looks like, and there's nothing really of concern that I'll get to here in just a little bit. Again, looking at the system development charges on this one, by the time they pull permits on their second campus, they will have paid $74,000 in system development charges. That's equivalent to about 260 single-family home system development charges. Again, a little bit more detail on what the sewer component is made up of. Mainly employee usage, so that's things like toilet flushing, sinks, maybe a break room prep sink, that type of stuff. Pretty minimal on that type of thing. The bulk of the sewer that we'd be accepting is specifically for their backwash water, and so that's where when we talk about the permanent water for cooling that we will be supplying to them after February of 2025, that will just be straight Columbia River water that while relatively clean, it does just include some suspended particulates, that type of thing in it. And so each of their campuses will have a on-site filtering process to take that raw river water, run it through filters to clean it up a little bit before they run it through their cooling systems. And so what that backwash is periodically, in order to maintain their filters so that they can shove more water through their filters without having them be clogged up, they periodically have to backwash water, reverse through those filters to clean those filters off, and then they send that backwash water to us, which again is just simply river water with the particulates that have been filtered out of it over time. Again, important to keep in mind, we are not accepting, as part of this agreement, we're not accepting any of their actual cooling water, which would be coming through in much more significant volumes. So we're not accepting any of that water into the sewer system. And then again, I mentioned the backwash water makeup as far as what is inside of it. The city engineer has reviewed it, and there's no concerns from what they'd be sending to us. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
So, Mr. Morgan, the presentation that you just gave was on Resolution 2287, but are the rest of these kind of related to 2288, 2289?
They're related in the sense that they're serving the same issue, but they are different.
Okay. So the one question I did have is in the wastewater agreement. Our previous or other industrial user, we were monitoring outflow and what particulates are going in there, charging based on that. And so these have been reviewed, and there's no additional nitrates, for instance, or PFAS, or any of the other stuff that are kind of hitting the newspaper these days as particulates we don't want in our system or should be charging extra to remove. Is that fair to assess that's part of the conversation?
So with this one, it's not a concern at all. The backwash water that they're going to be sending to us, the concern is that it's too clean. If you think about our wastewater treatment plant, you basically have a giant digestive system out there, and so we have bacteria that break down things, and so it needs dirty water, frankly, with waste product and that type of thing inside of it. And so if you overload it with too much clean water that doesn't have things for the microbes to chew on and eat, then the microbes die, and that's a bad thing for our plant. And so we don't want just straight river water. And so the other industrial customer, they have a lot of plant matter and that type of stuff, and so it's a completely different type of an issue of what they're sending to us, and so we sample for that. Whereas if we're taking water that's too clean, then it becomes an issue with what we refer to as percent removal, which is a requirement that we have with our permit from DEQ as far as the percentage of how much volume of water that we're bringing in, how much we've removed things out of it. And so with this volume of water, we're not concerned about even meeting that percent removal issue, but we're really not concerned that there's anything in the water other than what would just naturally be occurring in the Columbia River already.
Perfect. Other questions? Yes?
Yes,
Councilmember?
I have several questions. And Article 3, which is on page 6, I would like to know if, how often is ADS paying? Are they paying monthly, weekly, or how's that being done?
Yeah, so that's Article 3 is talking about the actual act of constructing the improvements, and so they pay within 30 days of us submitting reimbursement requests, which as lately as we've been constructing it once a month.
Okay, I still have a few more questions. Page 6 and 7, let me go over to that really quick. 6, the bottom part of 6, the water and sewer service agreement. Let me see here. My question is here is why would the city pay fully the water system for ADS? My understanding is it comes in, I mean, we pay for it, and then they reimburse the full amount that we pay. And most times when people are buying something, they pay at least 50% of it, and then, you know, we loan out the other part. I think they should be able to pay some of it, at least half of it.
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to there is just as part of that section of the agreement, it's saying that if the city cannot supply that water, then the city will provide it at the city's sole cost. And so I just reconfirmed with our engineers again this morning, as of today, we could supply them with that volume of water at their site. So it's not a concern. So we'd be, we already meet that criterion.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned because you never know what's going to happen, you know. And so if the water, we weren't able to do it for something happening that's not in our control, I would not. I don't know, politically, am I supposed to say we, or can I say, because I don't talk politics, because I don't feel comfortable. Okay, I don't feel comfortable that we have that in there, that we will split the bill for it. I don't think we should have that in there. That's my opinion on that one. Okay, I'll move on to my next question. Let's see here. Page 9. The water sewer service agreement here, page 9. 3.2. Okay. I had just mentioned that I feel that they should pay at least 50% of the cost, and then the rest after completion of the construction by the city.
Yeah, so I think on that one, that's basically the section that's talking about the actual accounting process whereby the city, they've contracted with the city to go out and construct these improvements. We've gone out and bid the project, hired a contractor. We instruct the contractor to go out and construct everything. The contractor submits bills to us. We turn around, pay that bill to the contractor, turn around, ask ADS for reimbursement, and then they repay us within 30 days. And so that's a process that we've been working with them on for many years, and they've always paid within the span of 30 days. So that's just kind of how the process has worked in the past.
It's a good question, though.
Councilor Linton, so typically, if you're talking about millions of dollars fronting this, company goes bankrupt, who pays that bill?
Well, we would stop work immediately, I suppose.
What about the money that you've already invested, right? So having the money or some of that money up front is not a bad idea, or half of it. I know in my business professionally, we require some of it down to get it started. So I don't know, is that not typically any part of our process in the city ever?
This is not a typical process. It's what we've done with companies on these developments in the past.
Okay. I mean, I'm not worried about this partner. They aren't going broke anytime soon, but
Well, in Seattle, when I was up there this past summer, I don't know what it was they wanted the city to do, but the city would not do it. And there's a building downtown, beautiful, up until you get to the outside of it, until you get to like 5 floors from the top, where they deserted it. It's not even finished. To me, it's an eyesore to have that in downtown because the company's not getting what they want. And this was Amazon. Okay, but anyway, I shall move on to my next question. D. We're still on page 9, part D. Let's see here. The ADS reimbursement amount set forth in section 3, 2, A, B, and C will not be increased without the prior written consent of ADS. And I was feeling that that part of it should be, I think that's what I was feeling that should be struck out, because if the costs go up, I think the price that they should pay, not we bear that cost. Because, food prices go up, we still have to pay, So.
Yeah, so again, that section is talking about if, so basically sections 3.A, B, and C reference specific scopes of work that they've contracted with us to deliver on for their purposes. And so they're saying that if the costs exceed that, then they won't reimburse those exceedances without prior consent of Amazon. I would just say that our practice would be that we're not going to proceed with any cost increases unless we seek their authorization beforehand. And we already have a number of examples where that's been the case, where costs have come in or appeared as though they were going to come higher than expected, and they've approved them. We wouldn't proceed with those costs if they didn't authorize them beforehand.
Okay, thank you. And let's see here. Okay, I was looking at 4, but you may have answered that one already, so let me go and see. Okay, I think you already answered that one for me. All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions on resolution 2287? Yes, Councilor McCarthy.
Since we've talked a lot about the fact that cooling water will not be the backwash, I'm just curious, what is the plan for disposal of used cooling water?
Yeah, so that will come as a separate agreement before the council. We've been working with the company on a solution to send it to the Hermiston Irrigation District via their A-line canal just north of OSU Extension Service. So it would be effectively an orphaned, completely separate collection system that doesn't send to our treatment plant.
And then just curious, you sort of answered this, but I'm just curious if there's any concern over the impact to our ability to provide service or just upkeep on the infrastructure, just to truck it out there. Has that been accounted for? Because I know we're building new supply, but just, it's got to get there first.
Okay, so I guess I'm sorry, I'm looking at are you talking about like water rights capacity or the pumping capacity?
Our ability to continually provide their flow, basically.
Yeah, from an operational cost standpoint. Yeah, so that's where I talk about where they'll be paying all of so for the interim, again, with the cooling water side of things, we're really only talking about 16 months worth. And so what we will be charging them, they are purchasing water from the city of Hermiston Water Utility. They'll be purchasing potable water from us that had gone through the regional water system. And so that's where on section 4.1A, where it talks about the rates, they will be paying the city of Hermiston's water rate, which accounts for the cost of supplying them with water, unless the cost for the city to purchase water from the regional water system exceeds what we retail it to our customers for, because there is a potential concern that we may see something like that as the effects of Shears Foods not purchasing potable water from the regional water system bounces through our system. If that's the case, there's language in there that says that if that rate increases, then they would pay essentially the higher of whatever the current city rate is, or what the cost of the city is to purchase that water.
And then I know Councilor Linton touched on this about not knowing what's going to happen. I'm just curious, could there be, and what could potential situations be in which we were not able to provide the agreed upon amount of water? What might happen, or what could happen?
Yeah, so that's again where there is, in there, there's a section that references that it will fall under, I think it's chapter 57, which is the city's public works section, and there is a element in there in the water supply section of our city code that talks to water curtailment operations and how those are administered. And so they would be handled the same as every other water customer in the city. If there was, for some reason, a statewide water emergency or something like that, then there's a process that we have in our water system master plan that calls out for how we curtail water.
Thank you.
Councilor Durham?
I would like to know, how do our rates compare to other towns that have an ADS facility?
I couldn't tell you. So this is one of those issues where it's such a unique scenario that every utility's costs to deliver are going to be very different depending on a lot of different factors, how far away they are from a source water, what's inside of that water. There's a lot of different components, so it's not something we really considered looking at. So.
Councilor?
When you say what the rate for paying for the water is the same as residents, why wouldn't it be a little bit higher since this is a company, a business? Is there, going to use a lot of water?
Yeah, so when the City Council approved rates back in 2017, they decided to make all of the water rates one rate. So all commercial and all residential customers pay the same amount. Also though, when they made that change, they did change it from a declining block rate schedule to an inclining block rate schedule. So now the more water you use, the more you pay.
Thank you.
Other questions, Councilor? Okay. Any public comment on resolution 2287? Okay. Can I get a motion to adopt resolution 2287 and lay it on the record? So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Printer, second by Councilor McCarthy, that we adopt resolution 2287 and lay it on the record. Roll call.
Yes.
No?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2 with Councilor Peterson and Councilor Linton in the negative. Resolution 2288, Regional Water System Phase 2 Pump and Motor Procurement. More this morning.
Yes, so like I mentioned, these two resolutions are related in the sense that they're serving the same development, but this is for actual awarding of contracts. So the water and wastewater service agreement that you just talked about, that's what we would consider to be phase 1 of the water supply. That's the temporary side of things. These two items before you this evening, that's to serve phase 2. That is where the city of Hermiston is the operator of the regional water system in partnership with the Port of Umatilla. And so the development is working with under a water supply agreement with the Port of Umatilla to be receiving raw Columbia River water under the Port of Umatilla's right for permanent cooling water capacity. And so the city, as operator of the system, we're still working with the company to actually construct the piping and pumping and everything to deliver them with the water. So we are working toward delivering that water to them by, as I mentioned, February of 2025. As everybody's been well aware, over the past several years, supply chain issues can arise. And so what is before you this evening is to pre-purchase several of the long lead time items, which is several of the pumps and motors and some of the control systems that are going to be take a little while. So we're still finalizing the actual design on the actual construction side of things. So before we go out to bid on the construction side of things, we're just purchasing some of these pumps and motors and control systems ahead of time so that our contractor isn't waiting on those to deliver. And so I will tackle both of these kind of together. So the first one, Resolution 2288, that is for the pump and motor procurement process. We put it out to bid back in July, had several companies interested. We did open bids here last week, and this is probably the first time in my 11 years here that we've actually had this issue arise. But so the low bidder ultimately did not meet the specifications as were set out in the advertisement. They'd contacted the engineering firm 2 days before bids closed and indicated that they didn't think that these items would be able to be resolved before bids were due. So they still submitted based on incomplete submission that ultimately didn't meet the criteria. So they show up as the low bid, but it's the low bid not meeting the criteria. So that was Whitney Equipment. The engineer's estimate from Anderson Perry was $1.15 million. PumpTech did submit a responsive bid at $2.3 million. We verified with the company, who again is reimbursing us for all of this, what they would like to do, whether or not they would like to award it to PumpTech, since they were the ones that actually meet the specifications. The company indicated that that was their preference, was to go with the one that actually meets the specifications. And so we are recommending to award the contract for the pumps and motors to PumpTech. On the Resolution 2289, that one is for the controls procurement. That's basically the computer systems and everything that controls everything. We only received one bid. This one's a much smaller item of work. The engineer's estimate is only around $88,000. We only received one bid from TAG, the automation group. They are the city's integrator of record. Their bid came right in line with the engineer's estimate. So we're recommending awarding that purchase to TAG. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Any council questions on either of those two? Any public comment on Resolution 2288? We'll handle that one first. Regional Water System Phase 2 Pump and Motor Procurement. Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2288 laid upon the record?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we adopt Resolution 2288 and laid upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Resolution 2289, Regional Water System Phase 2 Controls Procurement. Any other questions from the council? Any public comment? Can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2289 laid upon the record?
So moved.
Second. Been moved by Councilor Kremer, seconded by Councilor McCarthy, that we adopt Resolution 2289 and lay it upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Resolution 2290, authorizing an information technology services agreement with the Umatilla Rural Fire District.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the fire district that covers basically the city of Umatilla and their surrounding areas. They've approached the city to provide service. They heard from the city of Umatilla that we do a really good job, and we anticipated that they would ask for a few more hours, but with the hours that they've requested, we feel like we can cover it without adding additional staff. That is something in the budget we could, but just want to let the council know that at this point, still not planning to add additional staff. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Any public comment about resolution 229?
I think Council Peterson.
Oh, Council Peterson.
So this is a question somewhat specifically regarding this, but then also, it seems like this has been kind of a reoccurring theme of a job well done needs more work. Do you see this like at a certain point where you will need to add staff if we are to continue to?
Yeah, if the next, if additional hours are requested, even from an existing customer at any kind of a substantial amount, we anticipate needing to add another kind of desktop tech type position to be able to keep up with the demands. But at this point, we don't need it.
Council Brown?
A question regarding this contract in comparison to others, just specifically about the annual escalator for inflation. Is this the same inflationary number that we use for other contracts?
Yeah, we've been trying to get this similar language in all of our contracts. We didn't have it in the original ones, and so we've been putting it in all the new ones. So, yes.
Thank you. This is kind of getting fresh. But,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Okay. Any public comment? Can I get a motion to adopt resolution 2290 and lay it upon the record?
So moved. Second.
I move by Councilor Linton, second by Councilor Duran, that we adopt resolution 2290 and lay it upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. July 2023 financial report. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, Mr. K.
Got to make sure I'm plugged up if I can. First month of the new fiscal year, Cura had no activity in the month of July. We didn't spend any money. The state did not provide us any in the way of tax revenue. So not a whole lot happening there at the start of the year. July is actually the first month of the year. We do a lot of what I call internal funding of operations across the city. Mr. Morgan, how do you work this? And I never came here. There we go. Talking about general fund resources, I have explanations for why we're a little bit above projected. I would remind the council, we look at a 3-year average for all of our revenue sources, and that becomes our projection. It is not an exact science, but it seems to give us a good indication of how we're doing. In this case, the month of July, we're $142,000 over projected. Part of that has to do with we have higher overhead cost allocations to the funds outside the general fund. As historical levels, they've been kind of low. They got raised when we did the update. And also, I would point out the service charges were up about $20,000 and other revenues were up about $118,000. So all of that kind of plays into a positive picture as long as we don't have any, untoward actions happen. On the expenditure side, I would tell you we've had I got a little concern of $172,000 above projected. I can tell you municipal pool was $46,000 over projections, but I think Mr. Arts has been having trouble with the pool all season. I don't think there's any doubt that being $46,000 over is not a bad thing. It could be worse. We also had the airport do a fuel purchase in the first part of July. Sometimes they do that in June in the prior fiscal year. This year they did it in July. That put them over according to our historical processes we had as a pattern. And then in the non-departmental category, you'll see some negative numbers here in a little bit specific to these items. But in non-departmental, that's where we do our transfers of all of our dollars out of the general fund to the various areas to which they're to be distributed. In this case, we usually in the past do this in the third month of the first quarter. We did it in July.
and I'm not sure that was a smart idea, I'll own that, but we did the transfers, basically make the difference there in the non-departmental, as opposed to what our past practice has been for 2 years. This is simply a matter of a bookkeeping entry to put funds in a place where they're going to be spent. It's not an indication of any kind of concern, it's a timing issue. I want to be clear on that. These transfers are budgeted. We just did it 2 months early, because normally I'd like to do those in the 3rd month of the 1st quarter. So the particulars in the general fund, you can see total administration, and I would direct you, let me find the page, to page 5 of the financial report. You'll see the detail by department of where things are with the general fund departments. Administration is simply the council, city manager, legal, planning, and finance. We were 9% below projected. That's administration. We also have the category of public services, which is a catch-all for everything, transportation, airport, building inspection, so on, to the Harkin Ryder Community Center. They were $91,000 over projected. The largest of that, as I mentioned earlier, was the airport and pool. And then we get down to public safety. That was 11% below projections at $67,000 roughly. And then the non-departmental, due to the timing of the transfers out of the general fund to other departments as per like TRT and things like that, was $164,000 over projected. Net, we're probably not too bad off for the 1st month of the year, but as we get into the end of the 1st quarter, we'll have a better indication of what our true revenue and expense costs are, because a lot of this red numbers has to do with how we move money around throughout the year. We just did it in July. I'll be glad to answer any questions about the general fund if you have them.
I have a question. With the transportation, what is that covering?
Transportation has to do with everything regarding our taxi service and kayak. And the bus, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along. I keep my fingers working. General fund balance is in a good place right now. It's, lost my notes here, hold on. Did you put it, Mark? Oh, you didn't cover it, because it's in such a good place. We're well over our reserve this month. I will tell you, I will have a concern come October. My sense is we've done a couple of things later in the 1st part of the year in the past, and we probably should. I'll use as an example, the debt service on City Hall is $400 and some thousand. We have not yet transferred that out of the enterprise zone to the general fund. We're going to do that this month, and I should have probably done it in July, but we will certainly do it in August. That will help with that calculation. So it's, again, a matter of putting monies in the right place to get a good picture. I don't want to say I'm concerned to any great degree at this point. I think we'll be fine going into our revenue producing months in November and December. Utilities and street funds. 1 month is not really a good indicator of how things are going. I have no concerns at this point. I generally want to look at things at a quarter end period, because you see a little bit of red there for the street fund. We always will have a little bit of red in regional water for a while, losing Shearson. And then I have no concerns for HES and the utility fund. And this is the part of the program that I turn over to Mr. Morgan, because I think we really ought to be accountable for the basically $33 million worth of capital projects we have going on. So I will let him go ahead and speak to those issues and where we stand with them.
Yeah, so this first one, and you'll see it a couple of different times, we have two different projects technically with the North First Place reconstruction, because one speaks to the roadway portion and one speaks to the water line replacement portion. So this first one here, the 4.175 million, that's really just for the roadway portion, so there wasn't a whole lot of expenditures in July, because through July the work really continued to be focused only on the underground water and sewer main replacement pieces. So we're getting teed up to do much more of the roadway work in August and September. Next item, the Penny Avenue extension. The contractor finished all the paving the very beginning part of July, opened it up to traffic. They still, as of today, have a couple of punch list items that are being completed, but for the most part, that project is completed, just awaiting closeout. AWS system expansion, so work continued on the pump and motor and final connection, getting across the Bureau of Reclamation feed canal near North First Place in Feedville Road. Design work continued on phase 2, that's the permanent water supply that I mentioned coming from the Port Matillas water right, so construction on that will be bid here this fall. You just approved the pre-procurement for the pumps and motors for that project, and things continue to move forward on that project. This next one, the lead and copper program, it's kind of a ballpark number that was included in the budget there, $400,000. So this is the project where new state and federal guidelines require drinking water systems to inventory all of our connections for lead and copper piping with an actual physical inspection by October of next calendar year. So city staff did a lot of work on this with Oregon Health Authority and other water utilities, trying to understand what our requirements are going to be. And so a number of the things that we did were looking at all of the current city water connections that were made prior to 1980, which is when lead piping was no longer allowed in new construction. And so getting our hands around, what types of connections would be at risk from that standpoint of having lead connections. Then additionally working with the state, we've identified that we can do what we call a statistical inventory rather than physically going out and actually digging a hole at every single water connection in the city, touching all 6,000 water connections that we have, and inevitably destroying countless rose bushes and moving all sorts of things in the process. So what we're able to do is use this statistical guidance that will now allow us to winnow down that approach and come up with a statistically valid assumption of what our lead piping is within the city. And so now that we have that, Anderson Perry's beginning to work on a process to advertise for bid to hire an actual contractor here next spring to go out and actually do that physical excavation to inspect for lead connections throughout the city. Well, number 6 backup generator was supposed to be delivered last Friday, and it was not. So the delays continue on that one. And so this is the water line portion of North First Place. As I mentioned, work continued. As of today, as of this month, that water main has been fully chlorinated and put into service. And so focus shifts to the roadway piece. Well, number 6, chlorination structure, just only update is the design has started on that process. Well, number 4, control systems, again, the design process has started. We'll be bidding those projects here this fall and winter. Well, number 5, upgrades, design will begin soon on that one. That's a sewer lift station. I should say lift station number 5, wet well upgrades. The McDonald's and 395 sewer main replacement project, due to unforeseen circumstances, a portion of that section has already been replaced last month because it failed during routine cleaning of that line, because we see lots of fats, oils, and greases come through that line. It's on our bad lines list. Our vac-off truck goes out and cleans that line out on a regular basis, and this time they pulled out a big chunk of the pipe when they pulled their equipment back out. And so that's why we had to close the entrance to Walmart there for a couple of days here earlier this month. Unfortunately, through this process, we continue to wait on the easement work that we're still working on. We went in and replaced that line where it lies currently, but it will have to move to a new easement section when we do that work. So that process just continues to wait on completion of the easement, and our third-party legal consultants continue to move that ball forward. And now the Teen Adventure Park, I know, exists.
Construction began on or about July 31st. California Skate Parks is in town laying the groundwork and other excavations, and now putting in gravel. And you can, if you drive by there, you can actually see some of the bowls and the hips and the curvature of what the skate park's going to look like. So I got an update today. We're about 30% complete. We have some fabrications coming up from California to be put in, but things are running smooth and a little ahead of schedule. Looking around the end of October, possibly for a completion date.
Mr. Morgan, I have a couple questions. Gladys in Maine, you've got $100,000 in this year's budget, and the budget is 1.18. Is that because we're like a 10-year process to get to that? I mean, what is the rationale there?
Yeah, so that was something that I was mentioning to Mr. Krosik earlier, really back in June. There's a couple of items that were missed in the budgeting process this year as we were working our way through the capital improvement process. A couple of those things just simply got dropped out of the budget, so we're proceeding on that. The Gladys and Maine project, where we're at right now, is we're in design. We're going to be replacing the water main in Gladys here from 3rd all the way across 4th Street out to 7th Street, then replacing some water main in Main Street from 5th to 8th, and then in Hurlburt from 6th to 7th Street. So where we're at right now is we'll be doing the design this fall and hoping to bid it in the spring. We may have some construction-related costs late next spring, the bulk of it probably falling into next fiscal year.
So we will see a budget change next year that will accommodate that whole budget project?
And probably a sum for some of the
Maybe
construction.
something this year. Okay. And then, can you go back a page? There's one other thing that I had a question on. Forget. How about others? Questions, Council? Yes, Council President.
I'm very concerned about the McDonald's project. Was that due? Was the failure due to the grease and things that get in there? And are we able to hold the owners responsible for any possible future deterioration?
We will in the future. I'm glad you asked that question. So, I don't know if you remember when we brought the sewer collection system master plan to the council. You'll remember we television TV'd a whole bunch of line sections. That was one of them. And so we have pictures inside the piping. And so that's one where, not necessarily because of the fats, oils, and greases, but just because of the nature of the construction of the piping. The portion that failed was right in the center line of the driveway there into the Walmart store. So I don't know in that private driveway what their construction standards were for the base over the top of that sewer main, but I'm sure there was probably a number of lost truck drivers that go in there with their heavy trucks and stuff. Ultimately, that portion of the pipe has been has a lot of caving and crushed sections, and so once you start to get that, then it starts to have fats, oils, and greases congeal on any part that's not smooth, and so it starts to snowball and cause issues from there. And so, but the part where I mentioned where we'll be able to have hold folks accountable moving forward is We haven't had what we call a fats, oils, and greases or FOG program in the past. We do have Anderson Ferry now working toward developing our FOG program that we'll bring back to the council for adoption. It's been something that's been out there for a number of years. It's something that we could enforce upon, basically ensuring that mainly restaurants, but other types of uses, if they have grease traps, those types of things, make sure that they're actually cleaning them out on a regular basis rather than just dumping all their fats and greases to the city. And so that program will require essentially having city staff issue permits to all of those types of operations, going out, checking their operations on a routine basis. So there will be fees associated with that for entities that have grease traps and those types of things, but it also will include code changes that allow us to, if you're in violation and haven't cleaned your grease trap for 10 years, then we can begin citing.
So currently, we don't monitor any effluent from our private businesses except for the couple industrial users.
Mainly, yeah.
And there's no requirement of a business when they tie into the system to prove that their outflow is safe.
So we do have I would say that the sewer section of our city code is probably the most lengthy section of our city code. So there is a lot in there as far as what people can and cannot discharge to. But in terms of actually having the enforcement personnel to go out and enforce on these types of things, that's where we run into a real challenge. But the fats, oils, and greases is one that has been lacking and is not really in our code section to be able to have teeth to go out and enforce on. But if you're talking about things like, there's any number of harmful things that could get discharged into the sewer system. There's a lot of that stuff.
Auto mechanic shop, right?
Yeah.
And so they're, like, if they build a business like that, they're required by the code, and we make sure that they put that equipment in, but we don't right now have the follow-up to make sure
We
that
don't
we
monitor it
properly.
Yeah, and that's really the issue with things like grease traps. So like, a lot of restaurants, they have a grease trap and they're supposed to be serviced, but if it's not, then it renders it useless.
I saw Councilor Peterson first.
So thinking back and back and back, if there were to ever be any sort of business licensing type thing, that could be something that could be part of the categorization of businesses, and then what would be then put into place as a set of like, okay, you are coded as this kind of business, and as such you will fall under this section of what inspections will follow because you are being categorized as such. And then that could kind of let the city know what level of, oversight might be needed and could help understand what fee schedule might be needed for certain businesses versus others.
Councilor Merle?
Two-part question. Mr. Morgan, did you make up the acronym FOG?
I didn't. I wish I did.
It's like they have an acronym for everything.
No, that's an industry standard, apparently.
My second question is, would that, FOG, is that something that would be covered under like the county health department, or is that something that?
No, that's where I'm saying that's one of the things that it would be something that a city employee would begin having to enforce on. So there's several programs that are on the way, things with our FOG program. We also have an industrial pre-treatment program that we're beginning to stand up, and we'll hopefully bring to the council here around the same time frame. And then there's a couple of other things. And so we'll probably be looking at needing to add some level of enforcement personnel to manage those processes. But to the point of like the county health inspector, that's the same type of position that I think this would fit.
Thank you.
Any other questions on construction financial report update? Got kind of a far afield that's come. All right, Mr. K, you got other parts of your report?
No, sir, that's it.
That's it, okay. Any other council comments about the financial report? Okay, any public comment on the financial report? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept the July 2023 financial report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Linden, second by Councilor Duran, that we accept the July 2023 financial report as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. City committee reports. Anyone? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Got two committees to report on. The first of which is the Hispanic Advisory Committee. I want to take a point of personal privilege to acknowledge we have two Hispanic Advisory Committee members here today. We also have our newest Hispanic Advisory member, that's Alberto Munoz. He just joined us this last week, so we're really excited to have him and the expertise that he'll bring to our committee. We also have Jesse Roa back there, who's been a part of the committee more than once, and we're happy to have him back. So thank you guys for being here and being present. What we talked about in our Hispanic Advisory Committee was we got a Stepping Stones update. We had the privilege of talking with Jesslyn and Carolina, the Executive Director and Navigation Director. They answered questions that the Hispanic Advisory Committee have, and we were also able to just share information so the committee was aware and could disseminate the information to our community members. We also kind of just talked more or less where Stepping Stones is in terms of breaking ground, the amount of stays that they've already been able to have in the temporary shelter. They've had over 119 unique individuals stay at that shelter with over 2,000 stays. One of the things that I noted was it looks like the majority of the individuals that are staying there are Hermiston locals, or locals at least in this area. So majority of the people are from here. We are serving our community, which I think earlier in this process we at least have heard that there was more people from outside of the community coming in. Well, at least people that are staying in this shelter are majority Hermiston residents. So that was one of the facts and information that they were able to share. Other than that, I also wanted to comment on the Recreation Projects Fund, the TRT committee, and this was more for Director Arts. Just one of the things that we talked about in our committee was wanting a little bit, I guess, having a hard date on when the applications are due, and I think that's one thing that we expressed last council meeting. But the other thing that the committee was curious about is that we have probably like a reserve of about $250,000, and the committee isn't really sure if that's something that is tapped into. We as a committee weren't sure what those reserves were going to be utilized for, and so the committee wanted a little bit more information on what those reserves are for. Are they kind of akin to like the downtown projects when we have with the facades? We have an annual allocation budget, but we also have some reserves. So that's kind of the question that the Recreation Committee wanted to know. Is that something that is tapped into regularly, or is that something in, I guess, a reserve for any projects that we have, or is that going to be allocated for other projects down the line? So I just wanted to bring that up again as a part of that committee, and being a committee member. I don't think I brought that up in my last committee report, so I just wanted to bring it up again for the council to be aware, and also for you, Director Arts, to bring that back, I guess, the committee, or whether an email or something like.
Did you want an answer now? Okay.
Oh, if you have an answer now,
Oh.
I'll take it. But it
I
was, yeah, more direction for the committee.
I'll provide that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, other committee reports? No? Okay, we'll move on to the mayor's report. I want to say a special thank you to Lily and Crystal and all of the staff for the city picnic. I didn't get to attend, but I'm sure it was fabulous as usual, put on by Lily. So thank you for hosting and putting that together again, and all of you that were able to attend. I was able to attend the Hermiston High School ribbon cutting for the new annex, beautiful new facility. 13 new classrooms. 13 new classrooms, as well as a outdoor greenhouses, 2 of those that they can use for ag sciences. So nice addition to the community. I was also able to attend a regional nitrate conversation. As a lot of you are aware, we're in the Guama, Lower Umatilla groundwater area, Lower Umatilla Basin groundwater area. And we have 4 critical groundwater areas within this region, and so we happen to have a couple right around us. So having continued conversations about nitrates, there's ongoing well testing that's free to all Umatilla residents. So if you have a well and you're unsure of your nitrate levels, the county will test it for you for free. So please take advantage of that to find out if you have any issues with your well. Right now, they're just trying to do data collection, just find out how much of a problem it is. No solutions are being proposed at this point other than if you are elevated, there are some resources available to get you safe potable water. So please contact Umatilla County Public Health, or if you're in Morrow County Public Health. School is starting next week.
This week.
This week, starts Wednesday, all right. I don't have any kids in the system anymore. So Wednesday, so if you're out and about, please be watchful and mindful of our little ones out there walking to school, and be safe. And good luck to all you teachers and school district officials this week. Welcome back to school. And then also Lily sent out, or Jordan sent out a request for us to do some special testing and review for IT stuff, so hopefully you've completed that. Hopefully better than you completed your city manager review in a timely manner fashion. So Lily, has everybody completed their IT stuff?
I haven't checked.
Okay. There's some good information in there about making sure that you're reviewing external feedback through your email systems. We continually get phished and blown up with other bad emails through our system, and I had 2 last week after I did the test, so it was great timing that I was able to
I'll
catch
get
it.
some from you.
So yeah, it's interesting to see that stuff come through. So always check the from line, who it's coming from. Anything council report wise? Yes, Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you. I just want to report that we had Melon Fest on the 19th, which was a great success. I believe Judy Pearson told me that we had a record number of vendors, something about 53 or so. I think we had, out of the, 12 watermelon bathtub race teams that signed up, most of them showed up. There were a handful that didn't. That was a lot of fun. I've decided my mother-in-law is not helping me next time. And lots of writing. No, my office manager was writing, and my mother-in-law is also my boss. For those of you that don't know, could not keep up. We'll just say that. I did scream, "What are you doing?" But it was a lot of fun, and I'll have my father-in-law help me next time. That was a blast. We brought our money machine out there for the radio station. That was a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to it growing next year. It looks like everybody had a great time, had a blast. And then the next event coming up from the downtown district, basically right here, which will be the final event in the festival series, is October 7th. That'll be Cork and Barrel. There'll be live music as well as a selection of local wineries and breweries in the area, local food. I did, that reminds me actually, speaking of, I said Rotary would be doing breakfast and was wrong. It was the Pheasant, and because I knew breakfast was going to be there, I just got the name wrong. So Pheasant provided breakfast downtown. So everybody, you'll need to get tickets. I don't know when they'll be on sale for Cork and Barrel, but they should be promoting it relatively soon here. And then at the same day, earlier in the day on October 7th, there'll be Kiwanis Kids Day, which will be kind of joined with the Faith in Blue event at Butte Park. Lots of free activities for kids and families, bouncy houses, bowling lanes, pony rides, which I'm still securing. Some local entertainment and demonstrations we'll have there. So I encourage everybody to come out. That'll be 10 to 2-ish at View Park in Funland. And then, so basically, all of us that are working both events will be busy all day.
Perfect. Councilor Graham?
I sent Mr. Smith the wrong date, sorry. I am being given an award from Portland Urban League on September the 15th. And I think they have a lunch at noon and then an award ceremony at 1 o'clock. And it's going to be at the Pendleton Center for the Arts.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the award?
Doing things in the community, which you should just do it. I declined it last year because I felt that, you just should do things that help out in your community. So, anyway.
Congrats.
Thank you.
They're going to do that in Pendleton during Roundup Week? Well, that'll be
Yeah, I know. Start to say no again.
Councilor Graham?
Yes, since you mentioned the legislative information, I actually attended an event that Dulas Latinas Oregon, the Umatilla County Public Health Department put on in Umatilla and also in Boardman. It was on August 23rd and August 24th. So
That's the one I was talking about.
did you
I
attend?
went to the
one?
board with one, yeah.
Oh, I went to the one in Umatilla. So it was nice to see our commissioner there, Commissioner Doran, and it was a good turnout. There was a lot of folks that, what I liked about it is that they had different, talking about ag, the public health department, and some other entities that were there to answer questions from the folks that, could possibly be affected. So I did have some questions for them that I left them, with some questions for them to maybe answer in the future. But it was nice that they are actively trying to get the word out. And so I was able to bring home some samples and pass them out to some folks that I know have wells because they haven't gotten around to getting it done. But it was a nice event that I learned a lot, and I gathered some information so that I could also be helping people get informed about it.
Okay. Others? Councilor Graham?
Just a quick comment, just want to commend our newer counselors for the questions that you guys were asking during the AWS presentation. Oftentimes, maybe the public doesn't hear a lot of questions, but as new counselors, I think it's really awesome that you guys are coming in, looking at the information, asking these questions. So I just want to give you guys kudos and commend you guys for your hard work on that. You guys asked phenomenal questions.
Other comments from the council? Okay, no youth advisory report tonight. When will they be back?
Well, I have been communicating with Mr. Davis, their sponsor, and hopefully soon.
Okay.
But they'll start classes on Wednesday, and then hopefully we'll be able to see them pretty soon after that.
Perfect. All right. Okay. Mr. Smith, manager report.
Just all of you should have received an email from Lily today about a chamber volunteer fair, and been talking with Val at the chamber about that. Just her goal was to try to make sure everybody who provides resources is there so that people can learn what resources are available, and then the community can also learn what opportunities they might have to kind of participate and make a difference. So that's coming up in October, so we have a little while. If there's some agencies that you're aware of, make sure that they know about it so that they can participate.
Is the city planning on having a booth there?
I don't think so at this point, but we've
Got a lot of volunteer opportunities that they can participate in.
Yes.
pretty good. And let's see, I think that's really the only. Oh, I guess I was going to mention, since we're making plans for school to start on Wednesday, EOTech, the chamber met today to talk about the Festival of Lights, so Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
I thought everybody thought that.
We're going to have to outdo last year's Christmas celebration downtown. It was amazing. Several thousand people turned out for that, so gonna have to one up last year somehow. Okay, so we do have an executive session this evening. So we are going to recess for executive session. And the City Council of the City of Hermiston will now meet in executive session in a large conference room on the second floor for the purpose of discussing matters pertaining to review and evaluation of employment-related performance of City Manager Byron Smith. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602I, which allows the council to meet in executive session to review and evaluate pursuant to standards, criteria, and policy directives adopted by governing body the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member, unless the person whose performance is being reviewed and evaluated requests an open hearing. Representatives of news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are excluded. Representatives of news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No final decisions may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, the council will return to open session, which the audience may attend. The executive session will last approximately 15 minutes. city council meeting and consider approval of changes to city manager's employment contract. Mr. Smith?
Yes, the proposed amendment is basically to extend back to a 2-year window on my contract, so that's what I'd be requesting from the council tonight.
So if I understand it correctly, and I want to make sure that it's conveyed correctly, we're just extending your contract another year. There's no additional pay increase other than what's contractually required in there, which is the same rate increase as the rest of the staff.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? So we had a great review this evening, great conversation. We have an amazing executive director. I want to thank him for another excellent year. We have some calls to action that the council would like to see, and we believe we have a path forward on those as well. And so I'm super happy to have Byron continue as our city manager again for another year. So thank you for your last year of service here.
Thank you.
It's been a great year.
Pleasure to work here. It's a great community.
Thank you. Any public comment? All right. Can I get a motion to accept the changes to the city manager's employment contract?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Councilor Linton, seconded by Councilor McCarthy that we accept the changes to the city manager's employment contract. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes 7-0. Survived another year, Mr. Smith.
Almost 10 now.
Yeah, working on 10. Congratulations and thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.